DuckTalks is part of Res TV's network of podcasts. Check out res.tv for other great podcasts.
Hi out there, this is Brian Cummings, and you're listening to DuckTalks. Oh, shut up.
It's the week of Monday, January 28th, and you're listening to episode 56 of DuckTalks. Hey there, and welcome to another week of DuckTalks. Glad to be back in 2019. And this week, we're going to welcome back to the show, Pirate Steven.
Ahoy there. So January's almost over. I mean, it's almost 2020. We can pretty much say that.
We're on our way, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I hope 2019 doesn't fly by as fast as 2018. Then again, as I say that, I'm thinking, man, it's kind of sweet that 2018's over.
For sure.
We had fun, though. We're going to continue having fun in 2019. Speaking of fun, man, we had some fun this week, didn't we?
We had a great episode. We got to talk to a living legend, another living legend on our show.
We're recording this intro a little bit later, but earlier this week, we spoke with Brian Cummings. Brian was great to talk with. He had a lot of stories to tell us about his years working with Disney and other companies. We talked a lot about his career and about voice acting in general, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that. We're looking forward to having more voice actors and people hopefully involved not only with the Disney afternoon from our past, but hopefully DuckTales that's going on right now.
Yeah, we had a blast, like you said, and I look forward to having more people on the show. I think the audience will really enjoy this last show we recorded.
I agree. I think they're going to enjoy it. If they have half as much as fun as we did, I know they're going to enjoy it. But we're going to go ahead and bring that interview up, and we'll be right back at the end, just to remind you where you can find us and where you can contact us. Hey there, everyone. This is Mitch, and I'm with Pirate Steven. We've got a great podcast ahead. We're so excited to have legendary voice actor Brian Cummings on DuckTalks tonight.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Oh, excuse me. I have to be myself.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Okay, there we go. I found it. All right. Welcome. We're in the fabulous mountain hidden studio. It's like the bat cave, except the bats kept getting in our hair, so we got rid of the bats. But anyway, it's like our recording cave here. And in fact, let me hold up the Skype. I know we're doing Skype audio, so imagine, if you will, this wall right here. No. One of my most auspicious jobs it was the least auspicious creatively, but more people have heard it than anything I've ever done. Was I used to do a lot of announcer stuff as well as character stuff, and on a lot of DVDs they would do little interstitial stuff to promote other movies. And so my most famous job is when I said, "And now our feature presentation," and we would then go to the movie. It's like they put that on everything. Oh, you're our feature presentation guy! Wow. Yep, that's me.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's on every VHS and DVD from the 90s, and I'm sure everybody has heard that.
They did it on wire recordings back in 1874. Yes.
Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah, that's the deal. But you never know what people are going to remember, so you just kind of show up, do the thing, and have a good time, and then hopefully they'll have you back and you get to say it again. And now let me put my teeth in and say, "And now our feature presentation." Thank you. Okay, we're back.
It blew my mind when I realized that, and it was the first thing Pirate mentioned too when we were talking about having you on. He said, "Did you know he did these too?" It's like, wait a minute, that's like my entire collection.
Okay, so yeah, and I do a really good impersonation of myself, so I get to do that every once in a while. Good. All right, guys. So we're doing duck stuff today, aren't we? We're like, okay.
We are. Yeah, we like to talk about ducks, specifically those Disney ducks, and we understand you've brought life to some characters within the Disney afternoon. So we thought it'd be a lot of fun to speak with you and just talk about that in your career.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole Disney experience is unique. I think everybody has their own approach to stuff. So, being a fan, going all the way back to the Iwerks days, to the very early days, Walt and his acolytes were amazing innovators, and still to this day are they're the bar that has been set that other people have now finally attained, but it was so for the longest time it was really Disney that set that bar, and everybody was kind of always beholden to Disney. There was even a case where an ex-Disney producer produced a very auspicious film, and to test the film, they told people he had left the studio, he was at a different place, and they told people it was a Disney film in some test groups, and other groups they told them that it was not, and it scored something like 20% higher just with the perception that it was a Disney movie, because people expected greatness from Disney, and it was deserved,
Cool.
Yeah, they always brought it. I mean, with everything that they did, and looking back on it now, and because I remember watching a lot of those shorts and even the theatrical movies as a kid, but then when I watch them now as an adult, I'm just in awe of everything that they were doing, and especially moving into television. I mean, moving away from Walt a little bit, but it was Eisner that started making the push into television in the Disney afternoon.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was one of those things that there's a lot of things when they did so much, they had so many projects, so many things going on. I mean, everybody who's in the business has their list of the almost things. I was hired to be a puppet, to be a barf bag puppet. And to go to Disney, and they were going to fly me to Disney World, and I was going to work the tourists and do this little puppet thing. And then unfortunately, there was an accident. So a young child was severely injured, not through the fault of the park, but through the kid wasn't being supervised or something. I'm not sure the exact details, but this kid was injured, and they didn't do the barf bag puppet. That got sent away, and I get that. I've had a couple of those. I was the spokesman for an insurance company, and we were doing a spoof of Steve Irwin, and so there's in this particular commercial there was a shark cage, and the shark diver was like prodding the shark while he was in the cage because he was protected. So he was like prodding the shark and kind of teasing the shark, and there's a shot of him with his thumb up in the air and smiling through his mask like ha ha ha, and then behind him you see the shark coming up at about 300 miles an hour and ramming the boat right behind him, and you see the boat splitting in two and sinking with the chain on the shark tank. So the boat is sinking behind him as he's holding his thumb up like, oh, am I cool or what? And unfortunately, that was just after it was supposed to be released, and that was just when Steve passed away. Mm-hmm. Underwater, and so they pulled it. So there have been a couple of those, but I think there's always an innovation thing that goes on with our friends at Disney. They're always testing different things, and Eisner is a brilliant man. I think it's a lot of things. Whenever you look at eras, you can look at the eras in the early days of cartoons for theatrical stuff, like the Tex Avery period, even the Bugs Bunny periods. There's several producers who put their touch to it and did different things, and they all made their mark, and the excellence continues on. And when Walt Disney had his key animators, those key animators at some point retired and passed their skills on to other people. I loved the fact that when Wayne was the voice of Mickey Mouse, he started in the sound effects department, creating live sound effects, and worked his way up literally, and so developed a kind of a knowledge of the medium that didn't just happen like when some of us walk in and audition and do the part. A lot of these guys brought skills and approaches and different elements to the deal that helped to create the magic, and the magic is really part and parcel to that evolution and that love of creating and developing the character that has never left with Disney people and with all of the major studios. Disney's not only made Disney great, but they've made the other studios great as well, because competition forces people to have to be, to be better in order to be in the marketplace and survive. You have to take what somebody else has done and build upon that. And it's really kind of affected everybody.
Yeah, and I love what Sony has recently done with Into the Spider-Verse. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh, that was remarkable. Yeah.
That's completely changing it now. I mean, people are going to have to compete with Sony now, which they weren't expecting to do.
Well, and even that, and this is a great thing. You can go back and look at Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is essentially people from several different studios combining their characters and creating a different point of view, different kind of approach to it. And you can look at what's the Bugs Bunny basketball franchise.
Space Jam.
So a number of these kinds of things have kind of that seed has been sown. Or look at the Lego movies. I have friends who consider the Lego movies to be the penultimate greatest movies ever made. And whether you agree or not, they've gone into different places. And so I think all of that stuff. Look at, well, again, Will Vinton, who decided to do it in clay and animate vegetables. Okay, There you go. That was a whole different kind of an approach. And so there's, every time you think that everybody's thought of everything, then you find yourself with a zillion different dimensions of Spider-Man. Oh, wow. Who would have thought that could happen? And I honestly didn't expect to go see the movie and love it. I thought, okay, I got to go see this. This is going to be curious. And I went to see the movie and I went, whoa, it works. It totally works. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just always a question. There's always a new idea around the corner. And there's always somebody who's going to stretch that reality in a different direction. And that's one of the reasons this is exciting, because you never know what's going to happen or what's going to stick on the wall. And the other thing that's interesting about creativity is we all do what we think the audience is going to love. And the audience will sometimes go, nah. Or they'll go, I love that. And it's not predictable. If it was predictable, there'd be one guy on a mountain. He would be the guru of creativity. Go, let's find out what we should do. We'll do this now tomorrow, and it will be perfect. And everybody will do exactly this because he knows everything. Not true. Nobody knows everything. And that's kind of what makes it fun to do this, Gosh, I'm babbling tonight. I'm really babbling tonight. I'm so sorry. And I'm not even like a river or anything. I'm just like a silly voice person who just kind of pours out,
Oh, it's great. Before we talk about some of the characters that you portrayed, let's talk about how you got into voice acting and voiceovers. I've heard this before, but I'm imagining some of our listeners haven't. But it really was your love of cartoons growing up. I thought that was really neat.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I was thinking, if you ask anybody who's famous for voice work, from Robin Williams to Jim Carrey, the people who have like lots of TVQ or the Jim Cummings of the world, there's a number of amazing people. 90% of the people, in my opinion, if you ask them how they prepared for that, they'll say, well, I majored in acting out in school. And I think a lot of performers were not necessarily, it's not like a given, but I think a lot of performers were probably very shy, maybe a little insecure as kids. And the way we develop the ability to socially interact with people is, rather than be suave and debonair, or pronounce that the other way. Anyway, so, but in our ability to be funny and do silly stuff and make fools of ourselves to become accepted and or noticed is really the way a lot of us started. In reality, so many performers are in real life kind of shy people. And I've definitely at certain points in my life used this. I mean, when I was very young, I remember, at that age when you're really interested in girls and stuff. And I would be at the checkout and I would say something to the checkout lady, whether she was cute or was 94, and really not, cute for a 94-year-old, but I would get it through and I'd say, have a nice day. And the lady would say, what? Have a nice, no, did you say something? Have a nice, because I was so shy. So then I had developed hey, have a nice day. And they said, oh, you're talking really funny. Yeah, I know, lady. Ha, ha, ha. So if you just, so I think that was kind of how it started. But I also grew up very poor and we didn't have media. My parents did not afford it. So my best friends had television sets. And so my fascination was not only with doing it because it was fun to do, but my fascination was, since I didn't have it at home, I was even more desperate to get my hands on media and to see what was going on. And I loved cartoons. And I was fortunate enough as a young guy, when I moved to Los Angeles, by strange coincidence, somebody up there likes me. I was working at a production house doing production. I did character voices, but I also produced things for them because I started small market radio. And in walks this very diminutive man named Dawes Butler, who may have guessed it on the Disney Afternoon, but it was before. Dawes Butler was one of the two guys that really were the beginning of voiceover for television cartoons when Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera left MGM and started their own thing and started working on affordable animation for television. And Dawes was hired because he was so voice flexible to do all the characters. And then Dawes said, I know this other guy who's an amazing talent from Santa Barbara. I think then he was living even further north in California. But he said, this buddy, Don Messick, and of course, then legendary, Dawes and Don were all of the characters. They were, I could list the characters, Jinx the cat, Snagglepuss the lion, Huckleberry Hound, Yogi Bear. And so if Dawes was Yogi Bear, then Don would be Ranger Smith. So like Scooby-Doo, so Dawes would be doing character voices. And Don was interesting because he was also a classical music disc jockey, very conservative-looking guy, and he would come in and he was the original voice of Scooby-Doo himself. All right. Ooh. So it was kind of an interesting thing that I ran into Dawes by accident and became his first student by dumb luck. And then he gradually began. He'd always wanted to teach, and so he added to the class, and some amazing and wonderful talents who today have become quite successful began with the very kind and brilliant Dawes Butler as a guy who kind of guided our skills and guided our abilities, and that was pretty neat. So I'm very lucky to be doing this because I've had great input from some nice people,
Watching those Hanna-Barbera cartoons, that's some of my earliest cartoons that I remember as well. Yeah. I don't know that I ever realized those were just a couple of guys playing all of those different roles, so that's really cool. As I hit my mic, I'm good at that.
That's okay. Just as long as it doesn't hit back, you're fine. Okay.
It's never hit back.
Yeah, give it time. Wait, it'll one day you don't expect it. It will happen. Don't worry about it. Anyway, and Dawes, and I think this is another thing that a lot of guys today start out working live to a live audience. It's great because you know what works and what doesn't work. And Dawes started out during the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. I remember one story. Dawes was, I think we did a salute to remember Dawes last fall in LA, and a number of his students, many of whom are extremely successful. Bill Farmer was there, the voice of Goofy, who you've probably had, or if you hadn't, you will probably at some point have on your show. And just a number of wonderful people. And Dawes, it was interesting. I used to have this fantasy that I was his favorite because I couldn't pay for this class because I was broke and I was new in Los Angeles. And so he said, "You're on scholarship. You just don't, when you can pay, you can." And then, so we got together with all these people and everybody stood up and said, "Yeah." And Dawes told me, "You're on scholarship." And he pretty much gave everybody a freebie who needed one because of the greatness of him as a human being. And it was pretty remarkable. I think that kind of thing happens a lot in voiceover. A lot of people in voiceover are for some reason extra kind and supportive of each other. So one of the things I love about voiceover is that there's not just great talent, but just great human beings in the biz. But so Dawes was very instrumental. But I remember in the 30s, his wife was saying that they would do. They were working in Chicago, and then because everybody was broke, it was the middle of the Deep Depression. They would have these big review shows, and people would pay next to nothing to go in. And so the promoters only had enough money to pay like one performer, so they would do it like a talent show, and at the end of the night, the guy that win would get paid, and everybody else would work for free. And so I remember Murtis was saying that at one point that Dawes got everybody together and said the ventriloquist has 5 kids. I think it was 5. He has a lot of kids, and he hasn't won in like a week, and his kids need to eat. So tonight we all throw the talent contest, and the guy can win. He was just that kind of guy, and I see that a lot in voiceover. It's pretty amazing.
That's the kind of mentors that really pour into your life, that change things, like it's done for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I still learn today when I work. I still things. It's kind of like have a 60s experience, and like when suddenly what you did in the 60s, kind of the synapses fire in your brain. You go, oh wow. Well, that's with Dawes. Is things that he taught us still to this day resonate and show up in the middle of sessions or jobs or problems or circumstances. And every character has a lot of different elements to him that Dawes was able to I think was able to pin down so that you could realize that every character, voice has rhythm. People come into voiceover and have various backgrounds. Actors and actresses, of course, have acting skills, but a lot of people from session singers and rock and rollers, voice has music. If you're going to do an accent, if you're going to do an Irish accent, your voice doesn't do the accent, but it's got a kind of a music part to it as well that happens as kind of a societal thing, you see. And so you kind of like recognize that there's different music to the voice and rhythms to the voice as well as the acting part. And so those are elements of the deal. There's things that he would talk about, dentalization, and about, and I always do when I go to fan cons. I'll actually do this with you now. I can teach anybody to do a voice in less than 30 seconds. I just caution you, don't be too aggressive, because I wouldn't want you to injure yourself and blame me for doing it. But essentially, there was a comedian back in the day, and he had a running gag, and all he did was he took his tongue and shoved it to one side of his mouth between his teeth. Again, do it gently. Don't bite your tongue off.
But he would put his tongue to the side, and then when someone would have him on camera, he would look at the camera and deliver his running gag. He would look at the camera and go, "Why not?" And that was his bit. But you see, instantly, you cannot do that voice without having a dumb character attitude, because if you want to be understood, you have to talk kind of slowly and more exaggerated than if you're using your own voice. So therefore, you got a character instantly. Anybody can do it.
All right, I'm going to try it. All right. Why not?
There you go. You see?
I think we should do a podcast like this all the time.
Yay!
There you go. Yes. Okay. So, and if you do that in public, someone's going to call and you're going to be committed. It's all over. Anyway, yeah. So we're not talking about the subject, are we? We're just farting around here.
No,
I have a question now. So you obviously record a lot, a lot of episodes and things. Do you watch yourself back, like if you're recording an episode, let's say of Sophia the First or something? Mm-hmm. Do you watch your episode when it actually airs?
I love, it's still, that's the kid. That's the kid in me. If I get a chance to, and sometimes it's really interesting because, and I also do some music. I'm working on a fan con CD. last year I did a song about going to a con. It was kind of a blues shuffle. And so now I've got, I think 5 or 6 cuts. We'll do an EP when I'm doing a con in Sacramento in March. And so I'll release the EP by the end of the year. I hope to have the full CD. But like with character voices, there's an element of the child in us all, at least I think. And so I'll try to watch stuff or hear stuff, and it's kind of like I look at that and I go, that's not me. That can't be me. That's somebody else. That's because it's such a magical thing that transformations occur when you kind of let that stuff go. Every once in a while, I did a Christmas thing. I didn't send you. I did a Christmas thing because I used to give a Christmas CD every year to my clients, and I wanted to do different material and add every year. And I kind of ad-libbed a thing based on an Og Mandino book that I once read, and it's a guy who's digging in a trash bin to dig toys out of that trash bin in order to fix them up and give them to kids who are, and he's obviously poor because he's digging in the trash bin. So he's using what he can to be generous to other people. So he's digging stuff out of the trash bin, repairing it, cleaning it up, and then giving it to somebody else. And it started out, I was going to do something funny, and then this thing came out. And I really believe that sometimes if a character is really strong, it's almost like the character channels you, channels themselves through you. And it's not so much you performing as the character kind of taking control of you. And those moments happen every once in a while. They're kind of magical when they do, and maybe not to everybody, but that happened to me, and it still is one of my favorite things that I've ever done. It's kind of serious, but also sweet and a little bit silly because of the strong accent and stuff. But so it's really neat if you can do something that touches somebody else. It's a good thing, and then if you don't, you just have a good time with really great people. Like I said, the thing about voiceover that's wonderful is the people that you work with are delightful and are talented. And it's a delicious experience to be able to just have that creative moment that you share with other people who are really talented and very nice. And you learn from each other too, So you can't help working. I every time I work with Jim Cummings, also had the great. We had Mark Hamill and myself share the same agent, and I did a cartoon series that probably no one will hear of because it was designed for third world countries, and it was really designed about there was a Muslim kid and an American kid, a Jordanian Muslim kid and American kid, and Mark and I played their grandfathers, and we were both archaeologists. So Mark played the American grandfather, and I played the Jordanian grandfather, and we were kind of like the setup. And then these two kids who started out being foisted together because they were on an archaeological dig with their grandpops, and so they become friends and have adventures and stuff. So the ulterior motive was to try to create peace and understanding between two very different cultures, and that was a kind of a neat thing. But it was also really neat working with Mark, because he's a quintessential actor, and it was marvelous just to feed off him, and it was a delightful. And it was also fun to have a Jordanian director and to have to master they didn't just want a generic accent, Middle Eastern accent. They wanted a real thing. And we basically found voice samples from several different Arab cultures and kind of listened to them. And then they gave us direction. So it was a neat challenge and a nifty thing to do. When it was all done, it's now off someplace in the ozone. And the show is about, I think it's The Adventures of Ben and Izzy, but it's out there somewhere. I have not been able to see that, but I would love to see the actual finished show.
Cool.
Very
Didn't
cool.
make it in the afternoon.
So you probably get a lot of you're the voice of my childhood, I'm sure, when you're at cons, right?
And you try to have a response or go, and that's good because I'm also the voice of my second childhood, which I'm approaching at this very moment. Yeah.
But for sure, the Wuzzles was I feel like that was my first cartoon that my parents really got me into. I had Hasbro figures. They made so much merchandise for the Wuzzles. I had a lunchbox, the plush, and you were kind of like the showrunner or the front runner, I feel like, for that with Bumblelion. If I could tell my younger self that I'd be hanging out with Bumblelion, I'm sure I'd be fangirling and freaking out back then.
Yeah. I think again we had amazing. We had Stan Freberg as a narrator, who used to always joke that they didn't make a narrator doll. We had Wuzzles was brilliant. I loved the writing; it was very clever. I also got to play Flizzard, one of the villains, with Alan Oppenheimer, who was also one of the heroes in the show. And we had Joanne Worley and Henry Gibson from the original Laugh-In show. Brilliant comedian. It was a lovely experience to do, and not as long-lived as we had hoped it would be, but that sometimes is the way things go. It was a lovely show. I always. It's interesting about this deal because you go out and audition for stuff. I could list the shows that I auditioned for that I thought I got a shot at that nobody cared about, and now as I look back, the shows that I actually got are by far much, not that they're better than the shows I wanted to, but they're really lovely shows to experience. And when someone comes up and says that we were their childhood, there's a whole thing that happens is you have to sit back and realize, as a kid, when I watched cartoons, when I watched those Hanna-Barbera cartoons, I knew those characters, and as a kid, they were part of my childhood. I had a relationship with them. And the great thing about fan cons is that when you meet people at the con, you got to have to step back for a minute and realize those people know my characters, so they feel that they know me. I've never met them before, but they're still people who have a relationship with me, and I owe them that relationship in return, because I was part of their lives, whether I was actually physically there or not. And I still kind of I feel a responsibility, but also I'm greatly flattered and feel endeared to those people who let me be part of their lives, and also to the people who wrote me, who animated. It's a great kind of a thing. It's just really lovely.
Well, I had your plush and your action figure back then, so.
Well, I was a little Lodi, and somebody walked up, and I have the little plastic figures. So I'm looking right now at Hoppopotamus and Bumblelion and Rhinoki sitting across the. It's too bad we can't do this on camera because I've kind of like decorated this place. It was actually that somebody wanted to charge me like $30 gazillion to soundproof the room, and I thought, no, I'll just do the plushes from my cartoon shows and stuff, and hang all sorts of crazy stuff up here, and it's worked. It's soundproof, but in a very eclectic, fun way.
Yeah, I was surprised that they only made 13 episodes of the Wuzzles. I'm hoping that when Disney Plus gets launched, that Wuzzles is part of the stream-in service, because I feel like that is a show that people should see, that because they didn't get a chance to because it wasn't on DVD or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about the thing that happened with Wuzzles, as a lot of times happens, is that was early in the days of Disney television, of Disney bringing their stuff to television, and the networks decided that, as typically networks are battling for viewership. So what they decided to do was put Disney shows opposite each other, and to see if which one would be strong enough to kill off the other one. And that's unfortunately the way the ratings game works. And that's what happened to Wuzzles, is that there was a competition with another Disney show, and both shows were really great shows, and both shows had audiences, but the one that won was the one that stayed on, and the one that unfortunately was not able to stay on was Wuzzles. Darn.
It's a cool concept. I mean, it's so out of the box for Disney, it seems nowadays.
Yeah.
So original, and that's what I like about it. It's like Pirate said, we're really hoping it shows up on the Disney Plus, because we're both parents now, and we've got kids growing up, and we like to share the shows that we enjoyed, and our kids really enjoy watching those shows too. So I'd really like for my girls to get a chance to watch it. One thing that's funny is I was watching some clips and stuff this week, getting ready to have an opportunity to speak with you. And my wife saw what I was watching. She's like, "Oh, I remember that show. Why are you watching that?" And I was telling her, and she was like, "You're gonna speak with Bumblelion?"
Talk with Bumblelion. Sure. Yes.
I fortunately, and I'm not sure who got it for me, but I was able to save. I got a little snippet of Bumblelion that I think I still keep on my animation demo. And again, when you go to fan cons, what's surprising is there are people who want to have autographed pictures from the Wuzzles. So they're still, and this is what, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, maybe, that there are still fans that remember the show enough to want those characters signed. Bizarre in a cool way. So, yes, it's interesting to me that those things. And again, it's weird too. It's also weird having shows that are that old, because I'll have people come up. I'll have a family come up, and the kids kids going, Dad, come on, Dad, let's go, Dad. These are old. Come on, let's go. And Dad's saying, Shut up, kid, because he's there to see the things that he remembers as well. So it's become a multi-generational phenomenon now that there are people of several generations. Another character that I knew that it was going to be successful just because of what it was, but I didn't realize how successful. They still do G.I. Joe cons, just dedicated to G.I. Joe fans, and there are still Dr. Mindbender fans that are still rabid for the Doctor, and we haven't done those for 25 years, and it's a phenomenon. Again, these things have touched a lot of people, and we're kind of just grateful to be involved.
So one of the things I liked about the Wuzzles too is that the theme song is really catchy, and I feel like from then on, Disney found out the key to having a successful show was to have a great theme song intro.
Always a hummable theme song. Always a good thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Here in the land of Wuz, they're having twice the fun, 'cause every single thing is really two in one. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and when you add it up, you get a lot of that.
We're just watching the Elton John tribute, and Elton John mentioned that probably one of the greatest moments in his life was to be able to write the song from it's late in the evening here, so I'm kind of like, what is it? Lion King.
Oh, Can you feel?
And it was interesting. He mentioned that Jeffrey Katzenberg showed him a screening of the movie and didn't put the song in the film originally. He said, we just didn't have any place to put it. And Elton kind of like imposed upon him, said, you've got to put that in the film, which they did. They changed the film and put it in, and it was well worth it. One of his most memorable moments as a songwriter. Not to say that he's had any big moments, because he hasn't had that many hits. Excuse me, I'm wrong. All right. Yeah, but again, the song, and that again, Disney has really just created a bar that is so high that those songs are many of them Academy Award winning songs. We were looking when we went to see the new Mary Poppins sequel to the original movie. We were concerned that the that it would lose the charm of the original, which of course it did not. It had all of the requisite charm that Disney creates in their stuff, and it's again iconic music and iconic characters make for memorable moments. Don't go away. But again, back to I don't want to get too far. I keep rambling here. The Disney Afternoon has so many followers. I have a guy that actually invited me to Salt Lake Con this last year. And is attempting to try to get some of the Disney Afternoon people together at a con to do a special panel of Disney Afternoon voice actors. They're working on that, hopefully. I mentioned that just in case anybody else wants to mention to their favorite con that it would be really a great thing because I would be invited to be part of that. So it's a little selfish, but it would be also really just cool to sit down with Jim Cummings and Terry McGovern, Launchpad. Because Launchpad's my hero. And it would be just really great to hang out with a number of wonderful performers that have were able to be all together in that Disney Afternoon.
And we should probably clear it up that Jim Cummings is not your brother or your cousin.
Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, we'll find out that there's something going on. I'm sure, but not. And as people, it's kind of weird how social media is just because people would go and change. Wikipedia was like, somebody else is saying they're brothers again. And I've only driven by Cleveland. I've never actually pulled off into town, but we shared agents for a long time. He's a great guy, and I'm if we're distantly related, probably because we share the name, So it's fine. It's fine. I don't know that people know this, but just in case if you hate the spice, I traced my family history back to England, and before that, apparently the first Cummings in the British Isles was a Roman soldier, and it supposedly comes from the Cumine family, which is famous for some kind of spicy stuff called cumin, and I don't know why that is.
Makes a little sense.
Hey man, so yeah. I'm the heir to the cumin fortune. If I can just prove it to somebody, I'm not sure who, but I'll try. Very good. Because spice is the spice of life. That's a little redundant, isn't it? Or maybe it's the same thing over again. I don't know. Ask me later. I'll tell you. Okay. I'm in Colorado. What can I tell you? Okay. Never mind. All right. So
now another show that you were on, that's Disney Afternoon, is Gummy Bears, and you were Sir Tuxford.
I was Tuxford, yes.
3 seasons? Of course, 2 seasons?
I wasn't the first Sir Tuxford. The first Sir Tuxford was a man named Roger C. Carmel, who passed away, who was famous for an old Star Trek episode with little fuzzy creatures that happened to. He was a con man, and he was selling these little fuzzy little creatures that multiplied very quickly all over the starship. But Roger C. was Sir Tuxford. I also got to work as Artie Deco the parrot in that same series. It was. They weren't the biggest characters, but they were fun characters. And again, the cast was awesome. June Foray was there, Corey Burton, wonderful people. Robbie Paulson, who was also an artist, and I kind of hung out with him as the parrot. So it was a lovely time. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Disney's also very good. It's how they roll, and they do very well. They merchandise very well, and I thought the only thing they never did that I thought was they should have merchandised gummy berry juice, since it was the whole thing that gave everybody their bounce and spring. And I thought, why doesn't Disney market gummy berry juice? It'd be perfect.
But they do Donald Duck orange juice. I mean, gummy berry juice makes more sense, right?
Donald was there first. I get it. Okay. Oh well. Dang it! It's one voice I can't do. I do not do it. My wife actually grew up in near Pasadena, in near or above Glendale, and Clarence Ducky Nash lived across the street from her high school, and he'd sit in his front yard and do Donald for all of the kids as she grew up.
I bet that was cool.
I feel like that's the only one. The only one I can do is Donald when he's mad. I just do something with my mouth and I go.
Oh man, do that. It comes out like some guy going, okay, he's going to die. Don't do that.
That's me. I just spit everywhere.
That's good. That's all good. That's why they have those foam things on your microphone. People say those are to keep you from popping. Nah, it's just to soak up liquid. Anyway, so onward and upward. But again, that was a kind of a chance thing that I happened to be doing something else for Disney, and suddenly Roger C. was not available, and so they just said, here, can you do this? And they liked it, and we went on with that. There's so much that's chance. It's like you open one door, and if you went through one door, that whole thing with G.I. Joe was a chance thing. I was doing something else for Wally Burr, and I didn't realize that Dr. Mindbender was going to become such a big thing. So you just kind of lock tight ones, and it's the same thing. It's why we audition every day. When people send you stuff, you just keep on doing the audition. So I can't. There's a video game that I can't talk about that will be out in March that I'm on, and I can't talk specifically about the video game. But the interesting thing for me was I got hired to do a promo to promote the release of this video game, and I assumed it was an announcer gig. And so when they hired me, we went into the studio. It was a character gig who was narrating about the story for the game, and that character that I narrated is the character that they hired me to do in the actual game itself. So I did one thing, which was so as I was doing one thing, I said, man, this is so much fun. I wish I could do this game. This would be hilarious. And then about 6 months later, lo and behold, I'm doing the game. So it was there's a lot of surprises. You don't always get what you want, but it's never dull and boring. It's pretty fab.
So then a little show called DuckTales came along.
DuckTales.
Yeah. Still to this day, great moment, and it's great that they've retooled it. It's kind of like I feel just a little bit like Roger Moore when they decided to say, "You're no longer James Bond, Raj. Sorry, buddy." Oh, okay, but it was still a lovely thing to do. And again, the whole idea of DuckTales, based upon the Carl Barks stuff, is phenomenal. To have been able to bring that to the screen, to that whole thing being its own kind of a deal. And again, fabulous cast and really neat people to work with. So I was blown away. We did a DuckTales panel for the 30th anniversary last year in Los Angeles at LA Comic-Con, at the quote-unquote Stan Lee LA Comic-Con. And Russi Taylor, who is also the voice of Minnie Mouse and Daisy Duck, did the voices for Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And we had the joy of having Russi come out and join us. It had been a long time since we all were, or many of us were together. And Russi came out. And what's always tremendous to me is when a consummate performer does what a consummate performer does, she was able to show us how each one of her characters, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, had a very similar voice print, had that kind of version of the Donald Duck voice. But each one of them had different rhythms and had different kind of backgrounds, and so it was really great to have her show off the differences between the three characters as they existed in her mind. And that's the great thing about prose. When I worked with Dawes, and in the latter part of his life, he had a stroke, and he would go to Hanna-Barbera and do one of his characters, and there were new writers, and they'd bring back the characters they were doing. I think they did a race series where they would take characters from other shows and put them all in road races, and newer writers
I remember that.
Yeah.
My dad loved that. We watched that together a lot.
Well, but they would write stuff, and Dawes would say, the new writers would write stuff, as Dawes would say, Yogi wouldn't say that, and the writers were cool enough to go, what would he say? And Dawes would kind of rewrite the character a little bit because he knew the character better than the young writers at the time who had not been around for the whole arc of the history of the character. And so I think that's the other thing. An actor gets to know his character and know not just the voice of the character, but the soul of the character. So, and they actually built puppets for him. He would go to see kids in hospitals and stuff, and one was a blue character and one is a brown. So it would be basically Huckleberry Hound on one side that he would use, he would do the puppetry for, and it would be Yogi Bear on the other side. Then they made two kind of generic heads that would go on top of the two characters that didn't look like anything in particular, and he could just do whatever he wanted. But it was interesting. Also, I have a Dawes trick that's kind of fun. When he did, among the shows that he did, this is not Disney Afternoon, sorry. When he did, he did Babalooey and Quick Draw McGraw, two different characters on one show. And because of his stage work, he had all sorts of techniques that worked on stage for a ventriloquist. And one of them was he would make sure that his breaths were taken in correct places so that when one character was talking to another, the breaths wouldn't actually occur between the two characters, because it would then be obvious that he was switching characters. So he'd have Quick Draw talking to Babalooey, and Babalooey could cut him off any moment right like that because he took his breath in a different place, It was clever stuff.
Hey.
Other cool things. Yeah.
With Doofus, did you go in? Is that because you were talking about how you came into some of the roles?
Yeah.
Is that something you went and you auditioned for that part specifically, or did they come to you and say, we have a part we'd like for you to do?
Yeah, I do. No, did they? I just went into audition for Doofus, and Doofus was very. I had done other stuff for them before then, and so there were rhythms and things that Doofus did. I think Doofus probably was most influenced by stuff that I studied with Dawes, because he was he's just kind of just a very naive and kid who talked really high, and so it's just and again I go back to training. Kids talk differently than adults do. Kids are not like focused, and they don't have really great diction, and sometimes they're a little bit scattered and stuff because of who they are. So with him, Doofus was just like this wide-eyed kid who was kind of chubby and didn't have a lot of confidence. So you just kind of like went with what you felt like that and stuff, So and also I like the hero worshiping part. So I think for me, I also have 8 kids. So I think the deal is when I went in at that time, many of my kids were very young at the time, and so I could kind of relate, that experience. So I just did Doofus wide-eyed and silly, and I think probably at that time, since I had been doing other things, like I'd been doing Wuzzles and other things, so I think that the people that I was auditioning for knew my work and knew what I could do with other characters, and then they kind of captured that innocence. So it's always more than just the voice quality. It's late at night here, and it's kind of snowing out, so I'm a little crackly voice now. So I think Doofus kind of came out pretty natural. So if you're going to do something, it's kind of, today we live in a day where people want to do very much more focused and more subtle character voices. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that there are some people in the world who have very strong character in their natural voices. And when someone says they want you to do a natural voice, you get Eddie Deason, who has that Jerry Lewis kind of sound, great guy and a terrific act. And Eddie always talked like that and stuff. And that's the way he really talks. And so if I were to go in and do that voice, people go, no, don't do a caricature. Give me a real guy. Well, that's Eddie. That's a real guy. So I think part of it's belief. If you believe that you're a little kid, even though you're a 74-year-old man and stuff, and you don't have any hair, it's okay, because inside there's that little inner kid who just wants to go to the bathroom because he's really been sitting around for like an hour and he's really all stoved up. No, he's not. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Have you seen any of DuckTales, the new stuff for DuckTales 2017?
Just briefly, and again, I hate to say it's at this point it's not my thing, but only because I'm so invested in the other thing. But it's it's a new audience, and it's got its audience, and people love it, and I'm fine with that. It just isn't us anymore.
Well, they've kind of went the opposite direction with Doofus. Yeah. With their version. He's like a creepier Doofus because he inherited a lot of money. It's kind of like what Scrooge would have been like if the kids didn't move in with him. Well,
and there is a natural tendency when creative people are involved for, it's like the new Batman versus the old Batman. When someone takes over it, it's kind of boring for the creative person to just do what somebody else did before. Mm. And so oftentimes they'll try to reinvent the characters and move it around and stuff. And I think that's got to be something that you have to pretty much be expecting, something that you have to accept as part of the creative process. Is everybody's going to be able to see things differently from their perspective, and that will sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if it does, it becomes. For me, the other thing is if they were to, as an actor, if they were to have tried to do exactly what they did before, but with new actors, I'd feel kind of bad. Because I really miss being able to do that. Doing something totally different with a character is in some ways kind of okay. It makes it easier to get over not being involved in it because it's carving its own ground and going into a new place, and that's not something that I need to be part of. I can still treasure what I did, and I can still appreciate the creativity of the new guys.
No, I totally feel like your Doofus was the definitive version of Doofus, and I'm gonna stick with that.
Okay. I
don't know if you wanted to do this or not, but I sent you a couple of lines from the new DuckTales.
Oh.
Of the new DuckTales. This is from the creepy Doofus, and I thought it'd be funny or fun if you read those as the creepy Doofus lines as cheerful Doofus. So yes, okay. I could be your voice director here and read you the lines, and then
dream come true.
So creepy doofus will say something like, "Friend present. I like to play with my friends."
Friend present. I like to play with my friends. Well, doesn't let me play with anything else because she says it's not nice. Okay.
The next one's so odd.
All right, Mitch, go ahead and do the next one.
Oh, of course. So the next one is, I let you eat wall cotton.
I let you eat wall cotton, which is really, really good. And it's roughage, too.
All right, and the next, and they all kind of sound like, the next one is, what's next, friendy friend?
Okay, so what's next, friendy friend? Trying not to sound macabre, whatever that means.
And then the last one is, you are home, friend present.
You are home, friend present. My home, that'll be $39.95 for the night, because it's an Airbnb Toon residence.
All right, man, that's awesome.
Thank you so much for doing that. One of the things I really like about Doofus, it's the same thing with Launchpad. You brought up, I'd actually be interested in hearing, you brought up Carl Barks and those stories, and DuckTales is based on those stories, yet these were two original characters that were part of the show. And they're instrumental in the show. People, when they think of DuckTales, they think of these characters. And I think that's really cool that you got to be that character.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's interesting. Part of it is a function of, if you got to do 65 episodes of a show, you have to have places to go. The fact that they wrote Super Do, that we did outer space stuff with space crew. I mean, it's their imagination was tremendous, and even this is part of what Carl Barks started. These guys then decided to take another step forward into a new area. So they started where he was at, and then they added their own touches and their own kind of embellishments and other things. So again, that's part of the creative process that we have to respect. It's an adventure. It makes everybody become invested in what was started by a really creative guy. But it was really neat to be instrumental in what they did. The episodes were so well written, and I think that's another hallmark you find with Disney, is like you were talking about the theme song. It's not just, although I do have one little teeny lapse I will share with you. Disney just is so classy. They've done everything with such great class and put the ultimate effort. There's a certain sense of pride and of continuity, pride of where it came from and where it's going and who it's for. That I think has always been a hallmark of Disney that other people try to emulate. They set the bar really high. We're back to that line and stuff. And so, yeah. In any event, the only time that I ever saw that Disney, and I don't know why, is I was also one of the Beagle Boys, and I always forget which Beagle Boy I was, because they all looked the same. One was a little dumpy, a little fatter, but we were all crooky guys, right?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, you were Bebop.
I was Bebop. Thank you. Okay, but again, I feel if I look at I'm looking at them. Which one's Bebop? I can't see his name tag. But there was an episode. We did a pirate episode. And it was interesting because they had three of us. We were going we had the three of us, and they were going to do a barbershop quartet, which you can't do with three guys, but that kind of approach. And they had a song, and they had lyrics for this song for us to do. Now, maybe if I saw the episode, they went out and they hired some singers because it was weird because there was nobody there who had any music for it in this particular case, and one of the three actors didn't sing at all. And so we went in and made up a tune and faked it. Whether that happened on the show or not, I don't know, because I didn't get to see that episode. But it was interesting. I was like, is this Disney? What's going on? There's no music here. But there you are. It was cool.
We'll have to look that up for sure. Well, yeah. Bebop did get a part in the reboot. I don't know if you know this. But in the new show, there's a flashback in one of the episodes that kind of gives us the backstory of just a real quick glimpse of the backstory between the Beagle Boys and Scrooge's feud. And Bebop is one of the old school Beagles that's with Blackheart Beagle. And so you also, I think it's Babyface, and it wasn't Bouncer Beagle because he's in the current lineup. But one of the other, It's like Bank something. Anyway, but yeah, and he doesn't speak. I don't believe it. They're just in the background. But yeah, the character's in there in the new show too.
Cool. No, I get, okay. If I ever get a chance to see it, I'll grunt in the background just to be sympathetically there for it. All right.
We'll send you an image so that you can see.
This is good. Cool.
Well, in any event,
the Disney afternoon was a really great thing for kids to put all that stuff together in one place. And I think maybe some of the reason that they really decided to invest in doing that was and I could be wrong, but I think that the network thing for Saturday morning was very difficult for Disney. And I think that the difficulty being that they put their shows against each other when Disney put so much effort into the shows. And I think the afternoon was a really strong effort in getting those shows a solid audience in a place where it would be very difficult for someone to take away from the luster that Disney put on their characters. When you said those things about Wuzzles, it's true. The amount of attention to the writing, the amazing cast I was humbled to be with. Everything about those productions were just first class. Were just amazing, and still are. And that's why they like we brought up Sophia the First was another show that built for a niche audience, but brilliantly done and really terrific. I've done a lot of character things. Among them, I've done character singing. One of my characters was a monster. Was like living like a troll living under a bridge, and we did a song, and the people who did the music were phenomenal, and I had to learn the song, and it was not, a lot of times when you're doing a loose character, it's like it can be a little bit sloppy because you're a loose character. Not for Sophia. It had to be as precise as can be. It had to be musically viable. They demanded that it be as good as it could possibly be, not just a sloppy character, and which was hard and absolutely worth it. It was wonderful. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for those guys.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that episode. My girls loved that. And it's that character in the banging with the clubs and the music. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Again, it's everything that they do it's always a pleasure to be involved with it. Another character that's very obscure is they had a show that was designed for the web, and it was the Club Penguin shows, and I got to be the Santa Claus, who was the Santa Walrus character, and he was wonderful because he was a bit of a curmudgeon. He was not quite as jolly. He was jolly, but he also had kind of an edge, like a walrus would, and was wonderful. And I noticed afterwards, again, I didn't get a chance to see the web, but I saw on YouTube that this Christmas character had a following. Everybody liked the Christmas Walrus, and he appeared only once, but he was fun to do.
Club Penguin's been huge on the internet. We still see a lot. We still see a lot of people talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah, and so it's again, that's the lovely thing about all this stuff. Again, it's when you show up at fan cons and you run into people. It's amazing the reach that these things still have. Remarkable. So this is interesting because I don't know if I've given you any secrets, but this is going to be the first 12-hour episode of your podcast.
No, you'd be wrong.
Not the first, is what you're saying.
Not the first. No. All right. Pirate,
we had Tad Stones on a couple of weeks ago.
It became a two-parter.
Oh, that's awesome. Tad's a good guy.
Tad's awesome.
And even I'm trying to figure out what we can do together. We do Denver Con since I live here now, and I go back and forth to LA from time to time. But I've been, and I don't know if I'll get invited this year because I never take it for granted. But I've been at the con here, which had 100 and something like 30,000 people last year. At Denver, which I'm not sure what they're going to call it this year because everybody's got to change their name. But they oftentimes pair me up. It's interesting. They pair me up with one of the Disney animators who's a native Coloradan who's actually moved back but still works for Disney and designed Phineas and Ferb and also worked on the Gargoyles, and is working on a Disney series now. And we always do kids. They put us in front of kids, and we'll get little kids, and we'll do voices and draw characters based upon suggestions from the audience, and do little interactive things with the kids to stimulate them. It's awesome. It's again, the animators are great. It's neat to see an animator ad lib with a pencil and a sketch pad. Is phenomenal. To kind of put him in the same position to do what he does. And I actually, another moment, this is, again, it's not a Disney afternoon moment. I hosted a panel with with three of the more successful Wonder Woman character actresses from different periods of time. And I did, from one of my workshops, I have an exercise that we do that's always, it's good for laughs, but it's also a good exercise. It's called Attitudes in a Hat. And it was like originally just kind of like, what can I do based upon that Harry Potter movie that I saw? So I basically put about 100 different little slips of paper with attitudes on them, and we'll give somebody a script and have them draw a slip from the hat, and they'll have to do the script with the attitude that's on the slip of paper. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's a good exercise. But what makes it fun is you do it 3 times, and so you pull a second attitude out of the hat. You don't get to forget the first attitude. You just have to combine them. So you do that 3 times. And you can find some really interesting things where the attitudes conflict with each other or are very unusual and eclectic and different. And I pulled that on these actresses who played Wonder Woman. And I at first it was interesting because I kind of got this little like, oh, do we have to do that? And so we did that for the audience, and they were amazing. They knocked it out of the park. They did interesting and comedic and definitive characters combining, and it was like it seemed like it was going to be a pain. It was marvelous, and I got to afterwards say to the audience, you see, look at these amazing actresses and how not just are famous because they did famous characters, but they have such amazing skills that they can, on a moment's notice, take a script and be thrown this stuff and do remarkable performances at the drop of a hat. And the audience gave them a standing ovation, and I got big hugs, and it was a wonderful moment. It's neat. And that's the great thing about voiceovers. You don't have to memorize the lines or put the costume on. You just have to put the character on. But you just have to do it quickly and do it well.
Speaking of that, you were the stove in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, yes.
And I feel like that line you delivered was, I mean, you were just the stove, but that was one of the best delivered lines, and I feel like the whole movie.
It's weird, isn't it weird? And again, that was also a weird thing in that I had been hired to do another Disney project, and I won't go into the specifics, but they had made some creative changes, and I had actually done the whole job for a feature film, and they then changed everything. Because they felt that it had the show that they were working on, they wanted something a little bit more edgy and modern, and I did what they asked me to do, and then then they replaced a couple of us with other people, as people want to do, and then within about I think 3 or 4 weeks after that, I was called in on that movie, and they were recasting that particular character, and they were very short of time, so they basically recorded several people who had done a lot of work for Disney at the time, and they said basically, we're going to record all of you on this part because we don't have the time to do a big casting thing. So they recorded us all, and they said, whoever gets the gig, you'll know when the movie's released this fall. And so I didn't know till the movie was released that it was hired. And it's not a big part. It was a little bigger than what made it on the screen, because those things sometimes happen. But and again, same thing. I go to fan cons, and people remember Chef Boucher and his very small cameo part as a deal. So it only matters. What is it? There are no small parts, only small people. And so you take that whole thing you do, and that character had a life before you did your few short lines, and had a life afterwards. And if he exists in your mind and you convey that to the audience, then we've done the gig. And that was cool for Chef Boucher. He's actually named Chef Boucher. Boucher. Oh, yes. He's a very finicky fellow, I don't know why, but he's like that, I don't like people hanging out in my kitchen. They sample the food, They contaminate everything. It's crazy. I don't like them at all. Well, I do like them. I just have to be a little bit, like that, because I'm a chef. We're like that,
Was the chef in the sequel?
No.
Enchanted Christmas?
No.
It wasn't in the sequel.
See, that's why that movie didn't do as well as the original.
Yeah, of course. It's all
That's what it was.
Sure.
It was a great part, though, and that's one of the things I really like about talking with voice actors and getting an opportunity to hear some of the behind the scenes of just what goes into creating the characters, the voices, because it's more than just a voice. And I've had that discussion with friends, where they're hoping some actor reprises a role, but there's been a voice actor who's done that role for years, and I'm like, no, I'd really like to hear this person be able to do it again, and because that, I don't know, you were talking about the methods and everything that goes into it. There's just so much that goes into building that character, and like you said, being able to present it quickly, come up with it, and you're very much on the spot. It's been phenomenal speaking with you tonight.
Cool. Well, I think as well. It's just neat to share this stuff. Obviously, it's lovely to do, but it's always again. It's what I'm doing with you is kind of similar to what happens when you go to a con. Is we participate together in creating the character. There's a thing that somebody did a bad joke about a guy who was a scene stealer on a Broadway play, and the interesting thing was that was all about somebody who had a monologue, and the reality in these kind of things, in these character deals, is that there is no such thing as a monologue. If you're doing a character, that character is interacting with other characters. If you're doing a character that's doing a monologue, then he's interacting with who's watching the monologue. And that's why if people come up to the booth and say good things about how you were part of their life, that means that you got through that screen. In their mind, you came out of the screen and you spoke to them. And as actors, that's the whole deal. Is I have to think of, I'm speaking to somebody. If I don't know that person, that doesn't mean they're not there. And so I have to, in my mind, kind of create, in my mind and in the soul of the performer, I have to create that feeling that this is being done not just for it's not for myself, it's not for my ego, it's not even for the character. The character is communicating, and then we have to do that very quickly. So I think that's the challenge for an actor. Is acting is important, but communicating is much more important than even the acting. So and there are great actors who don't have serious varieties of voices that people love because they feel communicated to by that character. They feel a part of the scene, essentially. And that's the deal.
Where can our listeners follow you? I mean, you've got a website, social media presence. You've told us a little bit you've got some stuff going on that's coming up that we may hear about in the future, and we'll be watching for that. But where can people check you out online?
Well, you can find out stuff because I post things. So I have 2 addresses for the main website, and I've actually got designer kids who give me a brilliant, a much hipper website than I am. So the main website is thebriancummings.com. Mostly because there was a British actor who was also named Brian Cummings, and so I couldn't be him because he was already there. So it's thebriancummings.com. In that website, there are actually that has some demo stuff and design stuff. Then there are 2 attachment websites. One is for Media Monster, which is my kind of very amorphous, loose band of guys. We rock and roll and stuff. Have been doing that for a few years now, just for fun. But I'm also this year involved in a project called the CD will be called Fan Cons and Flying Fingers. There is an EP that will be released when I make my first con appearance in March in Sacramento, and so I'll have like about half a dozen cuts from that, and it'll be completed by the end of the year. And its hallmark is actually there's a video on YouTube called Fan Con Come On, C''MON, which is a video of the experience, and the first song, which is the title song of that. FanCon Come On is posted there with the video, and then also within that, so there's the appearances and workshops side, and then there's the music side. Those are both reachable through the Brian Cummings thing, and I post things about workshops I'm doing. I also post clips of various things and pictures and other stuff from time to time. So that would be the easiest way, and there also you can attend it to that. You can email. And reach me through that. I also have a FanCon agent, and I would never I'm sworn to secrecy that I would never mention Celebworks with an X, actually by name. I keep that secret. I don't ever tell anybody about those guys. Oh, oops, sorry. Yeah, but anyway, and then I'm out and about it. And again, I can't talk about it, but there is a video game that will show up in the spring. And I may be jinxing this because there's always the possibility, though we did the job and they were very nice, that someone go, I can get us this fabulous celebrity who, so you could be right. It's not, impossible that people get replaced. So I'm hoping and praying that we'll make the game. It was a lot of fun to do. My director was fabulous, and the concept's really, really terrific. And geez, I'm dying. I wish I could tell you more.
Well, we look forward to finding out what it is. And we'll be following for sure.
You could go on YouTube and see if there are any video game preview trailers out there that look like it might have my voice on, though.
Well, we could definitely do that.
Apparently this is a well-reviewed situation, and a lot of gamers are seriously looking forward to this, and it's really wonderful. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question that has come to me that I wanted to ask. We do have some followers of our site and people that interact with us on social media who are interested in getting into voice acting and voiceover. They're already working on their craft. What would you say to someone who's looking to get into the business in 2019?
So the first boy, it is a love. And it's really simply, I've had such a varied career. I interviewed, I used to have an airline show where I would interview pop stars. And I had a very famous band called the Moody Blues on my show. And I asked them the secret, because they have been well renowned, because they basically were the first guys to combine symphonic music and rock and roll. And I asked them the secret to their genius, and they said their record company, they pitched the record company the idea, and the president of their record company had a friend who was opening up a major music studio in London, and the guy said in order for it to be a major studio, it had to be perfect. So he was taking a year to prepare to open it to the industry, and he said, you can have the studio for a year at no charge. And you can go in. He said, but what you have to do is that at the end of the year, what you produce better be brilliant, better be amazing. So he said, we went in and we would write something and we'd work on it, we'd record it, and we'd listen to it and go, that's really good. And then after listening to it, he said it couldn't just be really good. It'd have to be really, really great, earth-shaking. So he said, so let's do it again. So he said the secret that they claimed to me, the secret was hard work. And I don't like to make people work hard. I like people to have a good time. So if you love doing something, you do it often. And the secret to voiceover, the secret to any craft is doing it a lot. That's the deal. It's what Mark Twain did when they told people to paint the fence. So the deal is, engage in the process and do it as a game. Do it for fun. Do voices to your friends. Whatever you do, find ways to engage in using your character voices as part of your daily life, and you'll continue to get better. And as you do that, one thing always leads to another. So creatively, I think that's getting the process started by just getting involved. Go do narrations for people at local colleges. Go do voices for student films. Go on the internet. Talk back to radio station commercials. Interact with the people who talk. They're already recorded, but it's interesting. When I teach people in class, the attitude of the person you're talking to affects your attitude. If someone doesn't believe you, you could be reading a really straight, dry piece of copy, and someone looks at you like you're out of your freaking mind. You're going to become stronger to try to convince them. If someone just likes what you do, you might be relaxed and go, yeah, hey, that's cool. So if you're talking to 3 people, it's different than if you're talking to 20 people. There are just all sorts of little things that are so you get involved in the process. Go to the dollar store, get coloring books for $1 and do voices for the characters in the coloring books. Just create them. Get yourself an inexpensive recording device and record your own voice. Mimic people. And always, even that's kind of funny. You can look at things in different ways. If you mimic somebody badly, you can say, "Oh, I tried to impersonate the guy and I failed." Okay, you can look at it that way, but you can look at it another way. You can say, "Okay, I did this voice. I didn't do an impersonation. I created a new character." Which works too, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of become engaged in the process. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Find your strengths and go with those strengths, but then also try to maximize your weaknesses. This is my own personal belief, if people come to study with me, the people who are announcers, I have do character voices. The people who do character voices, I have do announcers, because being able to work in those different areas are going to give you depth that are going to subtly affect you. As an announcer, if you have good comic timing, you're a better announcer. If you're a character person who can impersonate an announcer, you can do more different kinds of work. So it's just kind of be involved in the game, be involved in the adventure, and just approach each day as a new day and find different things. As I look around here, Dawes would walk into a school and he'd say, "Give me something and I'll do a voice for it." Someone would hand him a pencil and he'd find, okay, the pencil's got a point and it's educational, it figures things. So he would attribute characters to just odd things around him. So those are just a few things that you do, and that keeps it fresh and it keeps it interesting and exciting all the time. So yeah, and take chances. Always take chances. That's where there's an old expression. I was watching the Academy Awards and Javier Bardem talk. They talked about which movie was most special to him, and he said the B movies I did in Mexico were much more special to me because I learned more. I had to do everything, and I had a lot of fun, and I learned more than doing the bigger pictures. And that's also the thing. Is that there's that expression. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. There's no such thing as losing. There's only the process. So be involved in the process. If you love what you're doing, then you'll continue to get better at it, and you'll have a good time while you are.
Thank you. I know. I mean, that speaks to me on so many different levels. So I know that it will also be beneficial for those looking to get into voice acting.
So can I do shtick, a shtick that I've done a zillion different times to close before we sign off for the show? Can I leave you like a word? Can I leave you a word of advice from my sainted father?
Absolutely.
Well, my dad called me in. He said, "Son, always remember one important thing."
What's that?
That's all he said. I don't know. That's it. Sorry.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Duck Talks. We know you enjoyed that interview. If you did, reach out to us at Twitter at DuckTalks or shoot us an email at ducktalkspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you thought of the interview. Let us know if you have any suggestions of other people we should have on the show. We're already in talks with quite a few people right now. It's kind of hard to schedule those interviews with all of us and all of them, but we've been hard at work getting those taken care of. We're looking forward to that. You can also check us out individually on Twitter. I'm at Infinirama616, and you can find the Pirate Steven
at the Pirate Steven on Twitter.
And that's going to do it for this week. Until next time.
Stay glom golden.
Duck Talks is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds or audio clips played on this podcast are the property of their copyright holders.